I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
It was already super cheap to go travel around Egypt, but now it's ridiculously cheap. And on top of that, they don't have many tourists. So you got the supply and demand issue, and you've got a currency that is plummeted. So if you wanted to take a river cruise down the Nile or stay in a really nice hotel in Luxor overlooking the river, this would be one of those opportune times to go check it out and go see the pyramids, go see the ancient ruins, all that good stuff.
That is Tim Leffel, award-winning travel writer and author of the book, The World's Cheapest Destinations, currently in its 5th edition, giving you a little sneak peek into what is coming your way today. Tim circled the globe multiple times. He lives in Mexico. He's been covering destinations around the world and helping people move abroad and travel for over 3 decades. The dude, he does his research. He is legit. He knows what he's talking about. And every year, he updates his epic list of the world's cheapest destinations over at cheapestdestinationsblog.com. And today, you're going to get that sneak peek. You're going to get ahead of the trends for the coming year. You're going to get advice on traveling Europe on a budget, which destination is a perennial deal that always makes the list, and so much more. It's all coming right now. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. And, you know, when you end up in a cheap destination, I'm using air quotes there, obviously that opens up a lot of things. It doesn't mean that you have to be a budget traveler. It could just mean that your money's going to go a bit further. Perhaps you could stay a little bit longer. Perhaps it's a place you want to consider spending extra time. There are a lot of advantages for kind of being aware of these trends and which destinations you might want to consider in terms of the coming year and beyond. And Tim always delivers. I mean, the guy's been writing about travel, talking about travel, and helping people travel forever. And that's why he's a friend of the show. That's why I love to have him back on here. He's a personal friend as well. And he brings it. You're going to love this one. So please enjoy the episode. Stick around on the back end. I'm going to give a shout out to somebody in this community who is doing something pretty epic himself. Has currently already biked 3,400 kilometers, something like that. It's insane. You'll have to hear that story. And I'll leave you with a Lao Tzu quote about travel. Not the obvious one you're probably thinking about. So stick around for all that and much more. For now, please enjoy my conversation with Tim Leffel, and I'll see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers. Are you ready to party?
I'm ready.
One of my faves back on the show, the guest who has appeared the most times, perhaps, my good friend, Tim Leffel, also a living abroad expert, an expert on various travel-related things. You have so many websites, I can't even keep track of them. Anyway, Tim Leffel, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. Welcome back.
Always good to be on Zero to Travel. And it's funny when people are at some nomad fest or some gathering, often your podcast is what they'll mention. They'll go, "Hey, I heard you on Jason's podcast."
That's nice to hear, man. I wish we were doing this in person. We did get the wonderful privilege to travel last year in person. We're giving you guys a sneak preview today. I mean, you're going to get the hot off the presses. Perhaps this is not even published yet. The sort of the look at the year ahead, some of the cheapest places to live in the world. And then we also have some incredible travel tips on Europe. And this is what you do, Tim. You give people the best of the best. And I encourage people to, if they go to their cheapest destinations blog, which we'll link to, and they just go to Cheap Living Abroad up on the nav bar, take you to a page where you can sign up for the free email newsletter, which is awesome. I'm a subscriber there. So yeah, man, I know you started running some trips as well before we dive into the list. How's it going? How's it been to be the one giving the experience on the ground instead of getting it?
Yeah, we'll see. I'm going to run a few different ones in 2025 in Mexico and in the country of Georgia, a ski trip. And you and I skied together in Bulgaria. Now we're on to some other obscure ski destination that's also cheap, and we're going to see how it goes. But, I'm just kind of the figurehead. I usually hook up with some local tour company that can take care of the logistics because there's a lot of details you got to attend to with those tours and make sure everything runs smoothly.
Remind people what town you're in Mexico and where you're based.
So I live in Guanajuato, Mexico, which is right down the road from San Miguel de Allende. And so I do a Central Mexico tour where we hit those two places and Querétaro and a winery near Dolores Hidalgo. And it's a collection of UNESCO World Heritage cities and magic towns, as they're called. And so a lot of cool history around there. And I just like walking out my door and seeing buildings that are older than America, older than the United States, I mean, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. Your town just came up recently during an interview, somebody who had been overlanding for over a decade, nomadic. And I said, well, if you had to live somewhere, where would you live? And that was the one they chose, I think, one or two, I can't remember. So I have to visit there at some point. You're in a nice little spot.
Yeah, we've got room for you, man. Come on down.
Love it. Well, you have been living abroad for how long now?
Well, full time this time since 2018, but I was living in Mexico with my wife and daughter, and then my daughter went off to college and off on her own, and we moved to Mexico permanently. But we had been back and forth many years before that. And then in my younger days, I taught English in Korea and in Turkey. So that was my first living abroad experience.
Yeah. Well, what I love about your work is sort of the no nonsense approach to, there's really not a page wasted in your books, like A Better Life for Half the Price. You really just kind of full on with the advice and practical tips and wrapping that in some of the personal stories and everything, but it's actionable stuff. And that's the goal here today. With the list, you have the top 5 cheapest places to live in the world, sneak preview for the coming year. You want to kick it off and give us, I know we're going to have a little sampling and you can get the full post. I know it's not even out yet, but it's going to come out not too long after this podcast airs. So we'll link to that because I know you're going to do some updates there, but you guys listening now are getting the skinny here. Can you share a little bit, I guess, around how you come up with this list, what the sort of parameters are, or how you kind of gauge who's going to be on it?
So I look at a lot of different sources. I start with exchange rates because that really impacts the price on a year-to-year basis more than anything else. So, for example, right now, Egypt is incredibly cheap. Argentina is quite cheap. And those are solely because their currencies have taken a nosedive, and sometimes over the course of several years even. And then at the other end of the scale, Japan is usually one of the most expensive countries in the world, but right now it's quite a bargain just because of the exchange rates. And so it's important to pay attention to that because it can have an impact if the U.S. dollar weakens or gets stronger against other currencies, then that can make a big difference. And then also in the other direction, countries just naturally get more expensive over time as their wealth increases, as their population gets wealthier. And, since I first started backpacking around the world, I've seen a lot of countries go from dirt cheap to only semi cheap. And that's just because, good for them. They got, everybody got richer, like not rich, but I mean, got out of poverty basically and got into the middle class. So that's a positive thing, and we should be happy about that. But you do hear people whining like, oh my God, Thailand's not near as cheap as it used to be. And it's like, well, people went from making $2 a day to making $20 a day. So they're much better off, and that's going to drive up prices a bit. But Thailand's still a great bargain, so you should still go.
Yeah, before we have you pull out 5, it's an important point, I think, with the exchange rate thing, and people might be thinking, well, that's obvious, obviously. Obviously. You could tell this is my first podcast of the day, using that word twice in a row. It's important to think about the things you want to do as a traveler, and don't just write off places because they've been generalized as expensive, right? Like in your head. And I'm agreeing with you on Japan and also Scandinavia, where I am based, because the exchange rate is so favorable right now. You're not going to list Japan and Scandinavia alongside maybe Cambodia or some of these places that you have on your list, because it's still a lot more expensive than other places. But if it's a place you've always wanted to visit and the exchange rate's favorable right now, perhaps that is a reason to consider traveling to those places, was the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been talking to people that have been to Japan this year, and they're just amazed. They come back going, I was eating for half what I pay in the U.S. And that would have never happened, 10 or 15 years ago. So it's a big opportunity for people, keep an eye on that. Like if you wanted to go to Japan, now's the time. Like forget whatever else was at the top of your list, put that at the top of your list and push the other one down, because this won't last forever. But right now it's a golden opportunity. And Scandinavia too. I mean, it tends to be super expensive there, as living there, but sometimes the rate just tips in our favor a little, and it can drop your cost by 10 or 20%. And that makes a big difference.
I remember when I first came to Norway back in 2012, I think it was, first visit here. And because I've experienced the unfavorable exchange rate and the favorable one as somebody who's been back and forth in Norway for many years, and then now living here and now being a citizen. And I can tell you, it makes a huge difference in terms of the day-to-day sort of lifestyle and the things you're going to do. Yeah, if you're camping or doing things like that, you can always do things on the cheap. But when I first came here, it would be like the equivalent of $9 or $10 for a latte at a coffee shop, which makes it, in a way, prohibitively expensive. You're like, am I really going to go out and sit at a cafe and spend $10 for a coffee? Now, I can spend like $5. Still, I'd rather spend like $2, but now it's reasonable. You know what I mean? If you're going to be here for a long time, and it makes a huge difference in terms of like the day-to-day sort of experiences. You don't feel like so restricted, I guess. But the benefits of going to a place like Japan or Scandinavia is, obviously you get the cities, but you can also take advantage of the nature. And then that's something that can also cut your costs. Of course, I know you're a big hiker and big outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a long hiking trail in Japan that people go on. That's kind of like the Camino in Spain, where you visit multiple temples. And if you do something like that, it's going to be very reasonable because you're staying in reasonable places. You're walking most of the day. And you can have a really, I don't want to say like bargain basement vacation, but you can have a very reasonable vacation in a country like that if you spend more time outdoors.
That is on my list of things to do. What is it called again? The Kumando or
something like that? Yeah, I always think Komodo, but that's the dragon.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll look that up and figure it out. But let's dive into this top 5 cheapest places to live in the world for 2025, the coming year. What do you got, man? You want to kick it off with a recommendation for us?
Yeah, let's just start at the top of the alphabet with Argentina, which I already mentioned. And this has been on my list for years now, but things just don't seem to get better for them. So it keeps staying on the list, which is great for us travelers, not so great for the locals. But they've just had some of the highest inflation in the world for years now, and they don't seem to be able to get their act together. And they elected this kind of wacky guy that everybody heard about last year, and he said he wanted to dollarize the economy, but that's easier said than done, and I don't see it happening anytime soon. Hopefully I won't be proven wrong when this podcast comes out. But anyway, basically he let the currency float free. And so for a while there started to be not much of a gap between the official rate and the on the street rate. They call it the blue rate, but basically the black market rate. But now the gap has gotten much wider again. And so now you're going to get like, I don't know, 40% more somewhere in there for exchanging money on the black market. So we're back to the point where you should bring some cash with you and use some $100 bills and get a much better price on everything. So that is a bargain, and it's especially a bargain because, like Japan, it's a place with good infrastructure and good food, and it feels like a modern, well-run country on the surface. So despite their financial problems, you're not like making any sacrifices. If you go to a place like Argentina, they got a good metro in Buenos Aires. It's easy to get around on buses and internal flights. You're going to eat really well. You're going to drink good wine. And there's some amazing things to see, from the Iguazu Falls at the top all the way down to, the bottom of Patagonia. It's an amazing place with lots of different landscapes, kind of like the U.S. They've got jungle and desert and ocean and everything. So a lot to recommend about Argentina. And then I always tell people to go slow. So if you are going to go that far, maybe go to some neighboring countries, because Brazil is actually one of those places that's on the cheap end of the scale right now as far as their currency exchange. They've been through a lot of ups and downs over the last decade. Sometimes it's expensive, sometimes it's not. But right now it's a good deal. So you could go see both sides of Iguazu Falls and then keep going.
Nice. I love that. 2 for 1. So we're going to say 1 Argentina, 2 Brazil. We're going to have that as a 2 for this this list. What I love about your work, Tim, is you actually spend quality time in these places. I find it a little bit annoying when like a travel content creator, let's call them, will spend like 4 days in a place and write about it as if they know all the inside
and then in the subject line they'll put the definitive guide to so and so place or the ultimate guide. It's like, how's it ultimate if you spent 3 days there?
Yeah, exactly. I had spent 3.5 months in Argentina back in 2006, 07, and Chile. I couldn't agree with you more in terms of like get there and spend as much time as you can and just be there and enjoy it, because there's so much to see and it's really big. So
yeah, that too. It could be a 24-hour bus ride from Buenos Aires to Bariloche, for example. So you either have to take your time or splurge a little for some internal flights.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop. Now, back to the show. So we got Argentina, we got Brazil. Can you give us another one?
Well, let's move up to the Americas, North America, Central America. I would say Guatemala is like a perennial deal, and it's just something I've had on this list forever. It's in every edition of my World's Cheapest Destinations book. And I was just there last year in December, and it reaffirmed my belief that it's one of the world's best values, because you've really got a lot to see there in a pretty compact area. And I really love Lake Atitlan. I really feel like I'm sort of at peace there when I go there. And it's funny because there's a whole, yoga culture there and meditation and all that kind of stuff if you're into that kind of thing. But for me, I find it peaceful just hanging out by the lake. It's just a really beautiful place with the volcanoes rising out of it. But then you've got Tikal, which is really one of the most fantastic Mayan ruin places in all of the Americas. And then there's Antigua, which is a beautiful colonial city. And you can go hike up a live volcano and all this crazy stuff if you're into adventure. And then you're just like a quick hop over the border from Honduras, which is Copan. The Copan ruins are like almost on the border of Guatemala and Honduras. So we could make that another twofer, I guess. You could go across the border and be in Honduras, which is also a terrific bargain.
I've been to those areas you mentioned in Guatemala, and I'm again seconding all that you said. It's just a wonderful place to visit. Tikal is so impressive. Yeah, you're just in awe when you go to see it.
And it's kind of hard to get to, so it never gets as crowded as like Chichen Itza in Mexico because you can't just get there on a bus from a beach area.
Yeah, we stayed in a small village there, near there, and now the name's escaping me.
Yeah, it's a great experience to go there. Really awe-inspiring.
I'm going to circle back. Say the Kumano Kodo was the Japanese
okay, great. Yeah, that's
trail, the pilgrimage. So that's on my bucket list. Is Honduras still? I think I remember that was a place where a lot of people would go to get certified for scuba diving because it was very affordable. Is that?
Yeah, it still is. On Roatan Island, or there's one next to it called Utila. And yeah, they are still some of the cheapest places in the world to get certified, your open water PADI certification or whatever. And it's also just a great place to go diving because the reef is right off the shore. So it's not one of these places where you've got to sit on a boat for 2 hours before you get to see anything.
That's another side note. Just the scuba diving thing is an example of, if you have something you want to do like that, and I guess this is the two for one podcast here, but that's a great two for two. You're like, hey, I want to get certified in scuba diving. Like, I love to travel. Instead of doing it at your local YMCA, maybe you go down to Honduras and you get a travel experience and you do it there and you spend the same amount of money. I mean, it's just an example of a way of thinking, I think, that can open up your mind if you have other things that you're interested in. Maybe it's not specifically scuba. Perhaps there's somewhere you can go and learn that new skill or that thing and have a travel experience and spend the same amount of money that you would at home.
For sure. And it's the same with learning another language. If you're going to learn Spanish, it's a lot more fun to do it in Antigua or, Medellin than it is to do it at your local library or whatever. So yeah, that's and cheaper probably
sure.
than.
All right. So since we have double twofers here, we have Argentina, Brazil, and then Guatemala, Honduras. We're already up to 5. So if you want to extend this to 7, you can go for it. I don't want to limit you.
Well, let's just do a quick summary of, if you want to go to Asia, go to Southeast Asia because all those countries are quite reasonable. And by the same token, if you're going to go to Europe, go to the Balkans because all those countries are quite reasonable, except for Croatia. But let's jump down to the Middle East because nobody wants to go there right now because of this ongoing war that's hopefully going to wrap up in 2025. We can all cross our fingers or pray or whatever. But because of, the conflicts there, this happens all the time. But Egypt and Jordan have both seen a nosedive in tourism. So if you want to go somewhere where it's not very crowded with tourists, either of those are going to do well. And also at the same time, Egypt's currency has really nosedived over the last year and a half. So it was already super cheap to go travel around Egypt, but now it's ridiculously cheap. And on top of that, they don't have many tourists. So you've got the supply and demand issue, and you've got a currency that has plummeted. So if you wanted to take a river cruise down the Nile or stay in a really nice hotel in Luxor overlooking the river, this would be one of those opportune times to go check it out and go see the pyramids, go see the ancient ruins, all that good stuff.
That's an amazing point. And, these places are, you have to judge for yourself what you feel comfortable with doing. But a lot of these places, just because they're closer to something that's going on, tourists disappear, but it's not necessarily a risk to go there any more than it would have been before, right? I mean, have you been to Egypt or Jordan?
Yeah, I've been to both. It's been quite a while, but I would definitely go back to either one. Me personally, I would be a little leery about going up to the Sinai, which is where Dahab is. Speaking of scuba diving, that's another bargain place to get certified. but that would be a little too close for comfort for me, I think, to where the fighting's going on. But the main tourist spots in Egypt are not there; they're down the Nile. So, and you could always get out if something got hairy. But you know, most Americans, especially, are very timid about safety, even though they're living in this country where there's gun violence all the time. So, Europeans are a little hardier, it seems like, but Americans will definitely avoid a place as soon as it shows up in the news and anywhere close to it as well.
Americans tend to forget that they're living in a country where other countries are like, I don't want to travel there. It's too dangerous.
Exactly.
Have you been to Jordan?
Yeah, it's been quite a while, but it is an impressive place, and it's not that big. So unlike Argentina that we were talking about how it takes forever to get around, in Jordan you could pretty much get to everywhere in a day. So you can definitely see all the sights there without having to log a lot of miles. And Petra is just amazing. We were talking about how fantastic Tikal is, and Petra is definitely one of those places that once you go, you're like, yeah, this is worth it. This is awesome.
I've heard incredible things, and we're going to box up this list, which I think is a great one. It's going to be top 7. I'm just going to recap really quick. Argentina, Brazil, Guatemala, Egypt, Jordan, and then as sort of a catch-all, Southeast Asia, which fair enough, because you have multiple countries from there on the list. And if you're in Europe, the Balkans. And I think that's plenty for people to kind of pull away from this episode and get some inspiration and some direction for, okay, yeah, we're going to look at what we're going to dream and plan and do over the next year or two. I think you got plenty to draw from here. In terms of Europe, it's a place a lot of people want to visit regardless of maybe expense or it's not on this list or whatever. And you had a really great article that featured some of your best tips for traveling through Europe, touring Europe on a budget. You had 11 money saving tips. And, for those listeners that are going to be going to Europe in the next, 1 to 3 years, I feel like, or even beyond, I feel like a lot of these tips are, very evergreen. So I wanted to get your like 3 top tips for saving money while you're touring Europe on a budget.
Yeah, I think some of these will be dreadfully obvious to people that have spent a lot of time traveling in Europe, but for people that haven't, these are some easy to remember tips that will save you quite a bit of money in the end. First is on the planning side. If you're planning a trip to Europe and you're going to fly into somewhere, maybe you don't fly into where you're actually going to end up, and that works in the other direction too. But for example, last summer I was in the Czech Republic touring around, but I did not fly out of Prague because it was $300 more than flying out of Munich. So I just took a train over to Munich and left out of there. And even if you're further away, there's so many budget flights in Europe from the likes of Ryanair and EasyJet and Wizz Air and all these others that you could pretty much go anywhere on the continent from anywhere. If you start thinking of it in those terms, like if you see that a flight to Paris is really expensive, well, check 5 other cities around it, and you'll probably find a deal. And this is also true with mileage too. Like I'm planning a trip to Europe right now, and for some reason, there's certain airports that charge super high taxes, so that if you're cashing in miles and you're essentially getting a free flight, the airport taxes might be 200 or 300 on top of that. And for some reason, Amsterdam's one, London Heathrow's another, where you look at the price and you go, well, my free ticket's $350. Are you kidding me? That's not a very good deal. So I'm going to fly to Berlin instead because theirs is $50. So keep these things in mind because you can get a train to almost anywhere. You can get a flight to almost anywhere. So even like islands in Greece, I was amazed. I was in Corfu last year and I went to the airport and there were hundreds of flights directly to Corfu from all over the place. And they're on all those budget airlines I was talking about and budget charter airlines and all these kind of things. But my point is Europe is super interconnected. So don't, look for the second right answer, as Roger Van Oaks used to say, the creativity guy. Don't just automatically assume that you have to fly into the place you're actually going to start your vacation in or end it in. So look around for other options.
It's like a mindset too, right? Going into planning that you can adopt and kind of can open up the trip for you and change it.
For sure. And then this is kind of a trick in a lot of countries, but it's especially true in Europe that if you're going to go out to eat and have a nice meal somewhere, if you do it at lunch, it's going to cost a whole lot less than if you do it at dinner. And, that's not exclusive to Europe. It's just something people forget a lot of times when they're on vacation, but it's especially pronounced in Europe. I've noticed where everybody's having a lunch special and nobody's having a dinner special. And so, just gotta keep that in mind. And, just the options on the lunch menu are often priced differently than the dinner ones. It's just not as fancy. So, especially if you're in a place like Spain, you might want to have lunch because it's like some meal of the day, or you might just want to go out for tapas, which is not really lunch or dinner. It's kind of in between. But just, look at the other options for your restaurant meals, and then maybe just pick up some things to make back at your apartment for dinner, or, eat more lightly for that meal. And so just something to keep in mind. You don't want to go to France and not eat out in any time because that's kind of lame, but maybe you can keep your budget in check by not eating dinner out so much.
Fair enough. Love it.
So what about you, Jason? How do you save money when you're traveling in Europe?
One of the big things you can do is take advantage of sort of the camping cabin type of situation. That's going to be more difficult if you're going to a city, but like in Norway here, where I live, and just traveling different places around Scandinavia, there are a lot of places you can stay that don't necessarily have to cost a lot of money if you're willing to bring a tent or just stay in cabins and kind of do it in a different way. Again, I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but there are a lot of campgrounds here. I've even taken my kids to some of them where they have they have a playground, they have mini golf, they have different fun things like that. And it's we did this in Fredrikstad in south of Norway. We stayed at one of these places in the tiny room with bunk beds. The kids don't care. They absolutely love just like horsing around and running down the hallways. There was nobody there because it was off season. And it was right on the edge of the old town. So then we could walk right to the old town and do all that sort of stuff. And we didn't have to stay in a fancy hotel to have a good time. So I think that's a great way to do it. And of course, anybody that's interested in kind of nature, human powered travel, like when your activities are more kind of getting out, I think that can be a big money saver too. And of course, staying in a place with a kitchen. We went to Italy with the kids in, I don't know, some months ago, and we stayed in a place with a kitchen. So, I mean, obviously we ate out because we wanted to have the Italian meals, but we had breakfast at home, some days, and we had like snacks and things like that, and we could pack some sandwiches if we wanted to and things like that. So yeah, those are a couple
and
quick
then
things.
so that the countryside thing kind of leads to the next tip, which is to get out of the big cities. I know everybody wants to go see the sights in Rome or Paris or Florence or wherever, but those places are the ones that are the most crowded with tourists, and they have the most expensive prices. And you see it even in cheaper countries, like in the Czech Republic. Prague is easily double the cost of any other city in the Czech Republic. And it's because they can just jack things up for the tourists and they're going to pay it. And so as soon as you get to, a smaller city or a smaller town, your prices are going to drop quite a bit. And then if you get into the countryside, like Jason was talking about, then you can get cabins, or if you go on hiking trips, there's hiking huts along the way. You have those in cheap places like Bulgaria, but you also have them in expensive places like Switzerland, where it's quite reasonable if you're willing to like bunk it with the kids. And sometimes they have a communal kitchen, or they'll have a very inexpensive restaurant, so you can be hiking through the Alps and seeing some of the most fantastic scenery on earth, but you're not spending Switzerland Geneva hotel prices.
Yeah, for sure. One other thing I wanted to pull out from your article, and we'll link up to this in the show notes. Well, there was two things. One, you talked about living like a local, which is kind of going along with what you're saying here. And that can be like renting an apartment or a home or a cabin or whatever and staying there for a week or two and like really kind of just becoming a part of the community, exploring the area. Like you get to the point, I think, as a traveler where, or you can get to the point where it's not about checking off different things necessarily, although sometimes it's like that. But sometimes you could just stay in some random place for some days or even a week or longer and just kind of, it almost doesn't even matter where you are because it's all sort of new and novel and different. And every place has things to explore. A good example of this, I think, is when I took my kids to a small zoo outside of Oslo the other week. It's about an hour and 15-minute drive, so it's not something that most tourists will go to, but just a cool experience. You don't see any tourists there. If you wanted to go to a zoo and you wanted to have an experience where you're not around any other tourists and things like that, there's things like that you can do. They're just harder to find, I feel, because they're not advertised as well. But you find out those things, I think, if you're staying in smaller places for a longer period of time, or you're just willing to kind of sacrifice perhaps some of the bigger sites to just go and check out something that might not be quote unquote all that great, but it will be unique.
Yeah.
It will be a unique experience, and you'll probably be the only
For
tourist there.
sure. And sometimes, you just get those random serendipity things happening when you get into another area like that. We were staying in a very working class area of Athens when I was there in Greece last year. And it was Easter, which is, Orthodox Easter, which is a terrible time to go out to a restaurant normally. But we found one place that was open, one cafe, and we went there and we had such a fabulous time because we were the only, foreigners there, and everybody else was like the people that lived around there, and they were dancing and busting the plates and all those like cliche things that you think about playing the
Right.
Greek music and drinking ouzo. And it was so great because it was like, you would never find something like that in the tourist area, or if you did, it would be all staged, but this was the real deal. This was like locals dancing around and getting drunk and just having fun. And so that was like one of my most memorable experiences in the city, and it only happened out of chance just because it was the neighborhood we were in.
That's priceless. Those kind of things. It's a great example of what I was, like that kind of thing will happen if you stay in places like that. Like you don't know what it's going to be, but it makes it extra magical in that way, because it's not like you said, he's not going to a stage thing where you know what you're going to see. It's just spontaneous, but you don't really know what it's going to be. You can't, too hard to
Yeah,
predict.
and also just one quick point: almost anywhere you go in the world these days, there's things for kids to do. Like there are kids everywhere. So if you're with a family, you'll find a playground, you'll find like places for them to go play, you'll find some kind of children's museum or puppet show or something. So you don't have to be in the big city, and sometimes it's a lot less stressful if you're in a smaller place with your kids, and they'll have a good time. They're not as hard to entertain as we adults are.
Yeah. Another one of your tips that I liked was you said party where it's cheap, not where it's not. And you even referenced Oslo, where I live, because it's so, you go out here, if you want to have a beer, it's like 10, $15, literally. I mean, there are some places you can get them for $5 or $6, but it's, yeah, you have to kind of know. So you were saying in the article, you can go crazy in places like Bulgaria or Hungary or Romania or whatever. And then if you're going through an Oslo or other places, maybe that's a place you don't party. And I thought that was pretty cool because that might seem obvious from like a monetary sort of how much money do I have in my wallet standpoint. But again, this is also like a mindset thing, right? It can kind of give you a chance to shake up your travel experience. If you like to party and you're going to go into these places, you're like, hey, we're going to do some partying here. We're going to like, it's cheap, it's whatever, and we're going to go to another place and we're not going to do as much. That kind of changes how you might approach the planning and sort of the things that you do and stuff like that. So it's one of those things that could save you money, but can also, change the experience on the ground, which I like.
Yeah, and younger travelers especially, they want to go out to clubs and do all that fun stuff. But yeah, if you go out to clubs in I don't know, Berlin or Bucharest or somewhere, it's going to cost you a whole lot less than if you go out to clubs in Oslo or Stockholm. And so just kind of keep that in mind. It can make a big difference on your weekly budget or your monthly budget.
The last one I wanted to pull out is you mentioned the most of free attractions. And this is important because you probably know this from wherever you live, because sometimes, every city, if you live near a city or whatever, they might have like the day, one day a month where it's like the museums are free or whatever. And you can kind of take that for granted because it's just common knowledge. But if you think about it as a traveler, they have those in other places too. I've been on like free walking tours and things like that. I think there's even, I can't remember the name of the website now. If you Google it, you could find a website that tells you like where all the free walking tours are. There are all these free things you can do in different places. And so it might be a good idea to kind of see what those things are first if you're going to a place, and maybe plan around those.
Yeah, for sure. And the official tourism sites are usually a good place to start. Sometimes they'll be more reliable than just Googling it and seeing what comes up, because they're actively keeping tabs of them and listing them. Some tourism sites are better than others, but if you go to the Oslo or Stockholm sites, for example, you will see lots of free things to do on there. And also not quite free, but cheaper. If you stay somewhere for a few days, you can get a transportation pass that's quite a bargain. And some of those have discounts on museums and things like that as well. There's different passes if you're going to do a whole slew of sightseeing. And people often forget that Groupon is still around and it works anywhere in the world almost. And so it's not just your own city. You can pull up any city you're going to and seeing what kind of, maybe you can find a half price tour or half price admission or something like that. So just keep your eyes out for bargains. And there are still those printed rags too in a lot of places, especially beach destinations, that are full of coupons because they just want to get you in the door. So just keep your eyes and ears open to what possibilities are out there. And yeah, some cities have a huge amount of things you can do for free. London, you can go to all kinds of museums without spending any money, and there's a lot of them like that. Or like you said, there will be ones that have a free day. It's every Thursday from 2 to 6 or something like that, but you can just plan around that.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. Now, back to the show. I wanted to ask you some of your cooler travel experiences you've had recently, but before I do, I want to get one more huge money-saving tip from you, because I remember you wrote about this in one of your newsletters, and I think I almost fell victim to this, and it's a bit confusing with the ATMs and how they position certain fees and certain things they ask you to say yes or no to. So a lot of times you'll get somewhere and you want to take cash out, whether at your airport or whatever, you want to have some cash on you. And I don't know if this is relatively new, but sometimes they just ask questions in a really weird way to trick you. And it's so disingenuous. It pisses me off. Yeah. So give us your number one kind of like, what should people do when they get somewhere and they want to take money out of an ATM? What's the best way to do that?
So first of all, try to take it out at an actual bank one instead of like one of those weird little kiosks in a 7-Eleven or something, because I just feel like if something bad does happen, at least you have somewhere you can walk into and complain about it. And, sometimes a machine will eat your card or something like that. And also there are some scammers out there that will attach something to an ATM that's basically a scanner of some kind that they're trying to get your information. So, try to avoid the ones that look dodgy. Is the best advice on that. And then when you do go through the process, I've seen this now in about a dozen countries. So this bank scam is catching on everywhere. Basically, they will present you with an exchange rate and ask you to decline it or accept it. And you almost always want to hit decline unless it's worded in some weird way to try to trick you. But have some kind of app on your phone like xe.com or something like that that shows the actual exchange rate. And you may not get that exactly, but you'll know, if you're in the ballpark or not. So for example, in Mexico, it might be 18 to the dollar is the actual real exchange rate. And the bank will pop this thing up like saying, do you accept the rate of 15.5? And it's like, hell no, I don't accept that rate. Like, that's just handing you money. So you always want to decline that. It's basically just a scam that the banks are running that is apparently perfectly legal everywhere, where they can just give you a horrible exchange rate and say, well, you agreed to it. So pay attention. Don't be talking to your friend or looking at your phone unless you're looking up the exchange rate while you're getting your money out. Pay attention to your surroundings and pay attention to what's going on the screen and make sure you're not getting cheated.
We're so accustomed to you sign up for something online, you have to like check the boxes and hit approve and like kind of go through and just sort of click all the green buttons. So you're like, yeah, like let's just get through this. And to me, that can feel, that whole flow of the ATM thing can feel like that, right? It can almost feels like, oh, I just have to accept this, otherwise I'm not going to get my money. But you can still get your money when you decline it. You're just,
Yeah, and most of the other things are very logical. Like, yes, I agree to pay this fee. Yes, I do want to go through with this transaction. And then it comes to that screen. You're like, wait, what? What's this?
yeah. It feels like you just kind of feel like, oh, well, I guess I have to accept this,
Right.
but you don't. You can decline it and still get your money. So it's just important. And I mean, when in doubt, always decline, because you could just cancel the whole
Exactly.
transaction.
Yeah. And
By that, in
also
theory,
shop
right?
around for ATM fees because they're massively different. Like one machine might charge you the equivalent of $10 and the other one might charge you $1.50. And so if you don't have a card that's
Yeah.
reimbursing you for that, that's a massive difference in how much you have to spend from what you took out.
Yeah. I've literally seen like, 10, 12, like ridiculous fees. And it just seems like, yeah, a financial scam. It makes me angry because they know what they're doing. They know that, you're in the airport or whatever. They know people are, if they knew, they wouldn't be clicking through and doing this stuff. Anyway. All right. Well, now they know. So thank you, Tim. I'm just curious, like with your own personal travels, you mentioned the experience in Athens and the sort of like the working class neighborhood with the broken plates and sort of the chaotic partying going on around you, which sounds really cool. What's been going on with you, man? What are like some of the cooler things that you've experienced over the last year of your travels, let's say?
Well, normally I do a lot of travel in Mexico because I'm already there. And so I went down to see the monarch butterflies in Michoacan. They migrate each year south to Mexico, and they live in these fir trees, these evergreen trees, and there's like a million of them. You hike up this mountain, and you get to the top, and there's just butterflies in every direction swirling all around you, and it's a really cool experience. So I would definitely recommend that if anybody is heading to central Mexico. The closest big city is Morelia, but you kind of got to get out into the countryside for this. So you could join a tour, you can rent a car, whatever. I also went to this crazy hot springs place in Hidalgo, Mexico, another state, where you've probably seen it on Instagram because it's one of those places that like it's just a beautiful photo of these basically man-made pools that they put on the side of the mountain, but what's filling the pools is hot water from the hot springs, and it's on the side of a cliff almost, and so the views are really dramatic. And then I thought it was always just that, and then I realized when I got there, there's also this warm river that you could go swim in. There's some hot waterfalls, which is kind of weird, and it's just a neat place. So I do a lot of that kind of thing in Mexico. I went to Baja this year again too, which I've been to a few times, and also highly recommend just for the nature side of things. There's so much underwater life there, and it's just a cool desert landscape. And so, yeah, there's a lot to do in Mexico, so I try to take advantage of it. And then I've been in the States for a bit, taking advantage of some time here to see family, and so both sides of the family, mine and my wife's. And then I got together with a bunch of old college buddies in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we stayed in cabins and at a campground and went hiking together and sat by the campfire, and it was good fun.
I think there's some people that are hesitant to travel off the beaten track in Mexico because a lot of these there's a lot of media attention on some of these things that take place. Like more recently, there was I think a surfer and his girlfriend were killed in Baja or something, and you hear about gang violence and stuff like that. And this is the stuff, again, whether it's sensationalized or not. I'm like an objective voice here. I'm just wanting to get your perspective, being somebody who lives in Mexico, travels around Mexico. For anybody listening that's like, yeah, I want to explore Mexico, but I've always been put off by some of the stories I hear, some of the media that comes out, which again, we always have to take with a grain of salt as travelers because things get sensationalized by the media. But what's your take on that?
I think it's just important for people to remember that they hear about these incidents because they are so rare. If it happened all the time, you wouldn't be hearing about it. And I don't want to belittle the violence in Mexico because it is real. There's definitely a cartel presence, and they've got tons of guns coming down from Texas and Arizona. So, they're well armed. But they are fighting with each other. They do not want to go after tourists and bring attention to themselves. they don't want to, have the Navy SEALs or the special forces coming down or whatever on their head. Like they would rather just fight with the Mexican government, not the U.S. government on top. So they're not targeting tourists. And when something happens to a tourist, it's either because they were wrong place, wrong time, or they got hit in the crossfire, or they were trying to do a drug deal. What happened with those surfers recently was it was just a robbery gone wrong. It was just like a botched robbery where the people fought back and they ended up getting killed. But that's the kind of thing that can happen in any country. It wasn't cartel related. It was just some weird random thing. And, weird random things happen all over. But, traveling is still statistically way safer than staying home. I mean, most people die of car wrecks, not terrorism or cartel violence. And so I just want to say personally, I've been coming to Mexico for more than 20 years every year and then living here, and I've never had a single incident happen to me. The worst I've had happen is I've gotten pulled over by a cop and had to pay a bribe, but that's not a big deal. I didn't feel in danger. I just was annoyed that I had to pay somebody. So and I've rented a car probably 100 times, and that's only happened, 2 or 3 times, and always in the same state of Nayarit. So if you're traveling north from Puerto Vallarta, drive slowly.
On that note, should you pay the bribe? Should people pay the bribe?
Yeah, it's funny. They will take your driver's license if you don't, and they take it to the station, and then you have to go pay a fine. And normally the fine is more than the bribe is going to be. So it's a little bit of a negotiation there. But most Mexicans will tell you just pay the bribe and move on. Like it's just easier. And the cops know that, that's how they supplement their income. But what I am going to do next time, I've been carrying around an expired driver's license because I got a new one. And if this ever happens to me again, I'm going to hand them the expired driver's license, and they're going to take it to the station, and I'm not going to care. I'm just going to keep going.
Well, one time I will leave the liquor brand name unknown, but we were doing a promotional event for one of these big liquor companies, and we got pulled over and we paid the bribe with like a bottle of booze and some random t-shirts.
That works well.
In the trunk. Yeah, they pulled us over, and my buddy Danny, he's like all tattooed up. He's just ripped tattooed guy. And we were driving, maybe even a convertible, I can't remember. And it was a rental car, and he was smoking a cigarette, and they started accusing him that he was smoking weed and all this stuff. And it was clear that, he wasn't. And then it was on. The bribe was on. They left smiling, and so did we.
It's usually not much. It's usually like the equivalent of a bottle of booze. So,
it can be a tough call. Do you have any tips on negotiating a bribe?
Well,
or is it just kind of in the moment?
You don't have much cash on you, that's an easy negotiation. You just go, this is all I got. But
you're like, this is all I got. That's actually a strategy, though. You could have an extra wallet. I think we did that. You carry an extra wallet just with a small amount of money that you can open and be like, this is all I have.
But it's usually like a big dramatic production. They'll go through the process of like pulling out their ticket book or whatever, trying to get you to pay them more. But it's usually somewhere between 200 and 500 pesos, which is not going to make or break anyone.
I have 2 more things, and I'll let you roll out of here. Because you're running a plethora of websites. I still don't even know how many you have. It's insane and impressive. But you're traveling around, and you're a travel writer. You do a lot of different things. I'm just wondering what your number one tip is for staying productive while you're on these extended trips, and how, maybe productive is the wrong word, because maybe you don't want to be productive, but how do you balance the work travel thing?
Well, I do have a little help. And so if you're running a business, make sure you've got somebody or some bodies that you can hand some things off to now and then. I did go off the grid for a week once or twice, and that takes a little more planning because you have to set up a lot of stuff in advance, but it's a wonderful experience when you can do it. And so I try to schedule some things ahead of time, batch things when I can. And then when I'm on a trip, when I'm really trying to absorb everything and be in the moment and all that, then I kind of just take care of emergencies on email, and that's it. I just scroll through and see if anything is really going to matter if it waits a week, and most things won't. So I just try to take care of putting the fires out, and hopefully there are not many of those. And then, snatch some time when you can. I mean, if you're a night owl, then do some work at night. If you're a morning person or you've got kids that are getting you up early, then do some, an hour in the morning. And I'm a big proponent of that idea that there's 2 or 3 things you should try to get accomplished each day, and the rest is just gravy. And so, get 1 or 2 things done, and then call it a day and enjoy yourself.
We like that part. Nice. Is there a resource you're loving right now that's been, I don't want to say changing your life because that's too dramatic, but either like a resource or a quote, something you're living by, or something that's as we close out, some words of wisdom, anything like that you want?
Wow, I don't have anything queued up for that, man. Sorry. I would just say, if you want to subscribe to my Nomadico newsletter, I'm sending out 4 tips every week. It's on Substack. Sometimes product recommendations, sometimes hard-learned travel tips and things like that. So I'm always scouring for things like this. Every week I'm just looking at tips and what's going on and what people should adjust to. But I don't have any great quotable quote. You'll have to go to Instagram to get that.
That's cool, man. I put you on the spot there, so that's what we do. I will link to all of this, and of course the Nomadico newsletter, which I'm on that newsletter, and I'm on your other newsletter because we're friends, but I'm also a fan.
Oh, well, thanks, man. And I read a lot of them myself too, so I try to spread the love. And with all the weird Google algorithm things that are going on these days, I think we're kind of like circling back, back to the future. We're circling back to newsletters being more important again.
Yeah, I've been enjoying reading them and producing them as well. It's fun to, I think it's a good format that you can get like some good stuff in a really condensed kind of meaty thing. Then you can go about your day, and it's nice. So we'll link up to the articles we mentioned. It includes some of the tips and some of the updates coming. You'll see those probably a little bit after this podcast goes live, but that's what we do. We try to get the scoop here, man. So I appreciate you coming on, Tim, to give us sort of the inside track on the coming year. Let's cross paths, I hope, man. Let's look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, hopefully I'll make it up to Norway when it's not so expensive, or we'll meet up somewhere else.
Do your boozing in Mexico before you come.
That's right. I'll bring a bottle of tequila.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Cheers.
Talk to you later.
There you have it. I want to thank Tim Leffel once again for stopping by the show. Great mix of advice there. Some stuff to put onto your wish list in terms of destinations. All kinds of great stuff going on. Hope you enjoyed it. Loved recording that one for you. And I should mention one last time, Tim has various websites. You can go to cheapestdestinationsblog.com to check out some of the destinations he was talking about there. And then cheaplivingabroad.com if you're looking to live abroad. I think his book, A Better Life for Half the Price, is one of the best ones out there on this topic. I think maybe the best one. So check him out over there. Thank you again to Tim. Now, let me give a community shout out right now. By the way, reminder, this is a community powered show, of course. Get in touch anytime. And if you haven't signed up for our newsletter yet, you can hear I'm a little out of breath. All I did was walk up the stairs, man. Woo! I need to get back to the gym. Okay. zerototravel.com/newsletter. You can sign up over there. I got an email the other day from Alex, and we're working on getting Alex on the show here. I mean, after reading this email, I have to. He said, "Hey, Jason, been listening to Zero to Travel for as long as I can remember. Spent some serious time in my ears, from long runs to even longer. Insert uncomfortable transportation method here across all the continents of the world. Most recently, you've kept me company on my journey to cycle the length of Africa." What? I'm currently about halfway through as I enter Tanzania, having cycled over 3,400 kilometers through South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. The journey still has a long way to go as I pass through, and he just lists a whole bunch of other countries. It's insane. And he's doing it to raise money for a charity called Pure Water for Africa, who provides clean drinking water to communities across the continent. using the same technology he uses to get his drinking water. So I just wanted to give him a shout. He's out there on a pretty epic adventure, I would say, doing some fundraising for charity. Sounds like an incredible cause. And yeah, we're going to get him on the show. So we're working on that. Just wanted to give him some love. If you hear this, Alex from Australia over at Route to Travel on the socials. Check him out and you can follow along on his journey. So keep an ear out for him. We'll get him on the show at some point, and just want to give him a shout out. And again, get in touch. If you have a story to share, just want to say hi, you got a travel tip to share with the community, would love to hear from you. Okay, going to wrap this one up with Lao Tzu. Of course, the famous quote, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. We're not going to share that one. This one is about what makes a good traveler. Quote, a good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving. I love that. Absolutely love that. So there you go. A little Zen for you if you're listening to this and you're stuck somewhere at a bus stop, or, something's broken down. You can't get to, you travel long enough, all these things are going to happen. So there you go. You can keep this quote in mind when you're about to pull your hair out because of some delay or some crazy thing that's happening out there. So keep sane. Keep on keeping on. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.